Hello, this is Joe from Nerd in Korea. We are doing our budget Leonin series here, looking at counters in this one. And then by counters, I mean like +1/+1 counters and things like that, not counter spells. So yeah, main thing, by counter I mean not counter spells, so not all +1/+1s. But anyway, okay. So what we're covering is what I'm calling the exemplars. They're creatures that have very high affinity with like one particular color. So we've already done black for rats, red for goblins, and blue for merfolk. And we're doing white for Leonin now. And then I'm going to leave elves for last because I feel like that's the one people know the best. Okay, so again, their main color is white. What's weird about Leonin though is that they don't actually have a creature type of their own. They're all cats. So I'm including some cats on here, but mostly focusing on the Leonin. The Leonin are white, the cats are kind of all over the place. So yeah, it's a little bit of a mix there. And by budget, I mean $2 or less, and I am using the TCG market value, not a sponsor. In this video, I do have one particular one that's above that $2, barely, but it actually just went above, like the other day. I made the list and then I checked it again, and I was like, oh, it went up by like 60 cents. So yeah. It's barely above now, but you can still find it for less than $2. So the market price is above $2, but it's definitely like you can commonly find it for under that. Honorable mentions. Okay, these are all 10 cents or less. Bounding Felidar actually talked about in the saddle video. So whenever it attacks while saddled, put a +1/+1 counter on each other creature you control. Gain 1 life for each of those creatures. That is super useful in many decks. What is it? What am I? Halar and Shalai or something? Yeah, where you put a +1/+1 counter on a creature and it automatically does 1 damage to, I believe, any target. I should probably check that before I talk about it, but anyway, that's my recollection, so yeah. Anyway, it has saddle 2, so that's pretty easy. Again, you gotta have 2 power basically saddling it. It's kind of like vehicle. But anyway, Scrounging Bandar. So it enters the battlefield with 2 +1/+1 counters on it. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may move any number of +1/+1 counters from Scrounging Bandar onto another target creature. So you can, this lets you like pile up. You've got all kinds of effects that let you pile up +1/+1 counters. And this you can just shift it to something else. So especially if you're playing Commander, you want to be able to like get commander damage, especially if you're including it with like double strike or something. This will be a huge benefit there. Finally, Arcbound Shikari. Okay, once again, very Leonin, but Boros. So when it enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on each other artifact creature you control. Modular 2. So again, modular 2 means that he gets 2 +1/+1 counters, and when he gets destroyed, I'm trying to avoid the other D word, so I'm going to say destroyed. When he gets destroyed, he just puts those counters on something else. So yeah, can be very, or on another artifact creature. It has to be very good on artifact creatures. Unfortunately, my artifact creature deck is Izzet, not Boros, so I can't use this. I would. Okay, so Sylvar, Devourer of the Free. So this is definitely not a Leonin, but it's partner with Trin, Champion of Freedom. Trin is a white, so if you're looking for that in a Mardu, that might be good. He's a 4/2 with Menace for 5, which isn't great, but sacrifice a human, put a +1/+1 counter on Sylvar, Devourer of the Free. It gains indestructible until end of turn. You can make like human creature tokens so easily. You can make a whole bunch of 1/1s, and then anytime there's a board wipe or something, you're just going to be able to like survive it, or he's going to be able to survive it very easily, and be able to just kind of start piling up these counters. Again, he doesn't need to tap. You don't need to like pay any mana or anything, so you're going to be able to, if you make 10 1/1 human creature tokens, you can just like sacrifice them all and give them make him 14/12, just like that. And indestructible for that turn. Anyway, 56 cents. Fleece Mane Lion. Alright, so this is 1 in the green for a 3/3. That's actually quite good. Alright, when the mana cost is like, or when the attack and toughness outweighs the mana cost, that's always nice to see. For 3 and Selesnya or green-white, Monstrosity 1. So you can, if it isn't monstrous, yeah. Put a +1/+1 counter on it and it becomes monstrous, so it'll be a 4/4. And as long as it is monstrous, it has hexproof and indestructible. So this is going to gain hexproof and indestructible, which, you know, it's a lot of mana for a 4/4, but it's an option, you know? You can do this whenever you want. I believe monstrous, it doesn't say anything about not being able to do it during other people's turns. I'm fairly certain you can. So basically you just keep some mana open. People will probably think you have some kind of like combat trick or counter spell or something, and then you just, right before, you know, you untap or your turn, you just, on the previous player's end step, you just do the monstrous thing, and then yeah. You kind of protect yourself from a lot of other effects that way. People don't really want to mess with you when you have a bunch of mana open. So yeah, kind of double useful there. Anyway, 26 cents. Cutzill's Flanker. Alright, we had Cutzill actually in the previous video, so yeah. Anyway, for 2 and a white, it's a 3/1, right? But it has Flash, and when it enters the battlefield, choose 1. So it's a modal creature. These are great for if you've got any kind of flicker effect, right? Where you can keep putting it up, picking up, putting it back down on the battlefield. You can just trigger this over and over and over. One of those being exile target player's graveyard. To me, that's the one that really stands out. That's the one where it's like, oh, you can just like turn off any kind of graveyard recursion decks. You can just, I do love cards that are just basically like an off button for some strategies. And even if you don't use that, you can put a +1/+1 counter on him for each creature that left the battlefield under your control this turn. So again, if there's a board wipe, he has Flash, so you can flash him in after the board wipe, and then yeah. He's just going to get a pile of +1/+1 counters from all of your creatures, you know, being destroyed. I'm trying to avoid using words that YouTube doesn't like. Alright, or you gain 2 life and scry 2. Okay, scry 2 is really good. If you can do that even once per turn, you can have yourself set up almost every turn for your card draw, right? That's a huge strategic advantage. Anyway, 40 cents. Sovereign Onik Ahu. Alright, so this is my one that's above the budget range. Alright, so anyway, 2 Selesnya, so again, 2 green whites for a 3/4 with Ward 2. I know, Ward, people like scoff at Ward, but I always say it's better than nothing, right? There's lots of ways to get around with it. It is a flawed kind of defense, but it is still better than nothing, right? A lot of times if people have removal and you got Ward 2, they'll just hit something else. It's not perfect, but it's just a disincentive, I think is what I look at it as. Anyway, whenever it attacks, for each creature you control with power greater than that creature's base power, put a number of +1/+1 counters on that creature equal to the difference. So again, if you've got, especially if you've got like defenders and things like that, I think this can be very useful, where they're often like 0/4 or 0/5s. This is just going to put like 4 or 5 +1/+1 counters on all of them. They don't have to be attacking. Remember, the other creatures don't have to be attacking, just he does. So this can be pretty huge, right? Anyway, 233 at the moment. I found it for, I think 120 was the lowest I found it. Denry Klin, Editor-in-Chief. Okay, first of all, I love the art on this one, but anyway, alright. 2 Azorius, so for a 2/2, not great there, but he enters the battlefield with your choice of a +1/+1 counter, first strike, or vigilance, right? So he can be a 3/3 or First Strike or Vigilance, and then afterward, every creature that enters the battlefield gets the same as whatever counter he has. That's huge, right? So, yeah, whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield, if it does have to be a non-token creature, okay, sorry. So if Denry has a counter on it, put the same number and kind of counters on that creature. The same number and kind. So if he's got 3+1/+1 counters on him, all your non-token creatures that enter the battlefield get +3+1/+1 counters. Very, very easy to abuse this, right? You can just like start making these huge piles of tokens on anything you want. I would probably have them enter with like First Strike or Vigilance, just to like give it to all your other creatures or your non-token creatures. Anyway, super useful. Weird that he's only 19 cents, I think. The list. Okay. Sylvar, Devourer of the Free, 56 cents. Fleecemane Lion, 26 cents. Cutsil's Flanker is 40 cents. Sovereign Akinek Ahu? Okinek Ahu? Yeah, $2.33. Available lower. Denry Klin, Editor-in-Chief, 19 cents only. So the cheapest one is right at the bottom of the list. I kind of like that, or the top of the list, I should say. Anyway, take it easy.